You wake up in San Francisco. The year is 1848. You own nothing. No money, no land, no name anyone here knows. But you know something nobody else in this town knows. In a matter of months, this sleepy little port will become the center of the greatest gold rush in human history. For everyone around you, the future is uncertain. For you, the next 2 years are already written. Right now, San Francisco is barely a village. Fewer than 1,000 people live here. Dirt streets, wooden shacks, a quiet harbor where a few ships rock gently in the bay. The people walking past you have no idea what is coming. But you do. On January 24th of this year, a carpenter named James Marshall found a few shiny flakes in the water at a sawmill owned by John Sutter on the American River. The news has not truly spread yet. Most people who hear it shrug. They think it is a rumor. They think it is fool's gold. You know it is not. You know that within a year, the word California will echo across the entire world. You know that men will sell their farms, abandon their families, and sail halfway around the planet just to claw at the dirt here. So the question is simple. What do you do with that knowledge? Here is where most people would make their first mistake. Most people, knowing gold is in the ground, would run straight for the river. They would buy a pan and a pick and join the rush to dig. That is the obvious move. It is also the losing move, because history is about to teach a brutal lesson, and you already know the ending. The vast majority of the men who came to dig for gold left California poorer than they arrived. The river was crowded. The easy gold vanished fast. For every prospector who struck it rich, hundreds broke their backs for nothing. So you are not going to dig. You are going to sell to the people who dig. There is a real man in this story, and his name is Sam Brannan. He was a merchant in San Francisco in 1848, and he understood something the diggers never did. When he confirmed the gold was real, he did not run to the river. Instead, he quietly bought up every pick, every shovel, and every pan he could find in the region. Then he did something theatrical. He ran through the streets of San Francisco holding a bottle of gold dust above his head, shouting that there was gold in the American River. He started the panic on purpose. He lit the fuse, and then he sold the shovels. A tin pan that cost about 20 cents became worth as much as $15 once thousands of desperate men needed one. Brannan reportedly made tens of thousands of dollars in just a few weeks. He became, by most accounts, California's first millionaire, and he never mined a single ounce of gold himself. That is your strategy. So you take your knowledge, and you move first. You spend everything you can borrow, beg, or scrape together on supplies. Pans, shovels, picks, boots, flour, coffee, nails, canvas for tents, anything a desperate man will need when he arrives with gold fever in his eyes and money in his pocket. You stockpile it now while it is cheap and nobody wants it, because in a few months everybody will. But there is a problem. Knowing the future does not make the present easy. As the rush begins, San Francisco descends into chaos. Prices explode. A loaf of bread, eggs, a single night of shelter, all of it climbs to prices that would sound insane anywhere else on Earth. The whole town becomes a fever dream of mud, noise, and greed. And then something strange happens in the harbor. Ships begin arriving packed with hopeful miners. But once they dock, the crews vanish. The sailors themselves abandon their own ships and run for the gold fields. By 1850, hundreds of ships sit rotting and empty in the bay, abandoned where they were anchored. Some are eventually dragged ashore and turned into stores, hotels, even buildings. This is the moment of your first real decision. You are surrounded by abandoned ships and a town that is bursting at the seams. The miners need everything, and there is nowhere to put them. You could keep selling shovels and ride the supply wave. That is safe. That is proven. Or you could make a bolder bet. You could buy land. Right now, in 1848, lots in San Francisco are nearly worthless. The town is small, and most people see no reason it will ever be big. A patch of dirt near the waterfront can be had for a tiny sum. Some lots in this era changed hands for as little as $16. The risk is real. If you buy land and the rush fizzles, you are stuck with empty mud while everyone else cashed out their shovels. The reward, if you are right, is almost unimaginable. And you know you are right, because you know that San Francisco will not stay a village. You know that in 1849, the world will pour in. The 49ers are coming. Within roughly 2 years, the population of this town will rocket from under 1,000 people to around 25,000. Every one of them needs somewhere to sleep, to trade, to store goods, to build a shop. So while the diggers chase gold out of the ground, you do the opposite. You buy the ground itself. You take your shovel profits and you pour them into San Francisco real estate. Waterfront lots, streets near the docks, the places where every wagon, every ship, every miner will have to pass through. Why is this better than gold? Because gold runs out. A claim gets dug dry, but the town does not run out. Every new arrival makes your land more valuable. You are no longer betting on luck in a riverbed. You are betting on a certainty you already hold in your mind. Then the great event arrives in full force. In 1849, the rush becomes a flood. Tens of thousands of people cross oceans and continents to get here. The San Francisco you bought cheap is now the busiest, most expensive boomtown on the planet. The lots you picked up for almost nothing are suddenly worth fortunes. Land that cost a few dollars is changing hands for thousands, and you are not done, because you see the next layer of opportunity that the gold chasers never notice. All these miners are pulling gold dust out of the ground, but they have no safe place to keep it and no easy way to send it home. They need someone to weigh it, store it, move it, and lend against it. They need banking. They need transport. They need trust. This is the world that, in real history, gave rise to companies like Wells Fargo, founded in 1852 to handle exactly this kind of business, moving gold and money across a wild and lawless frontier. The men who built the rails of commerce under the rush made steadier fortunes than nearly all the men in the rivers, so you expand again. From shovels to land to services, you become the person the entire economy has to pass through. And here is the quiet truth underneath all of it. The famous names that came out of this era were rarely the diggers. A man named Levi Strauss arrived in San Francisco in the early 1850s as a merchant, selling goods to miners, and his name lives on a pair of jeans, not a gold claim. Domingo Ghirardelli came chasing gold, found more profit in selling supplies, and ended up building a chocolate empire. The pattern repeats again and again. The lasting wealth was built by the people who supplied the rush, not the people who ran into it. You understood that from the very first day. So let us count what you built. You started with nothing. You turned borrowed coins into a supply business at the exact moment demand exploded. You converted those profits into land in the fastest growing boomtown on earth. You layered banking and transport on top of it. By the time the dust settles in the early 1850s, you are not a tired miner with a sore back and an empty purse. You are one of the richest figures in California. Sam Brannan, the man who actually did this, was worth a fortune that in today's money would run well into the tens of millions of dollars at his peak. And he did it not by finding gold, but by selling the tools and owning the ground. In modern terms, you would be a multi-millionaire many times over, built in roughly 4 years, from a starting point of absolutely nothing. So why does this matter to you now, sitting where you are, in a century Sam Brannan never has imagined? Because the lesson did not stay in 1848. Every boom in history runs the same way. When everyone rushes toward the obvious prize, the real money is usually made one step to the side. In the gold rush, the winners sold the shovels. In every technology boom since, the steadiest fortunes have often gone to the ones who supplied the tools, owned the infrastructure, or held the land underneath the excitement, rather than the crowd chasing the prize itself. The question was never whether there was gold. The question was always where you chose to stand. The diggers stood in the river, hoping. You stood at the door they all had to walk through, knowing. So look at the booms around you today, the new rushes, the new gold, and ask yourself the only question that ever mattered here. Are you running into the river with everyone else? Or are you the one quietly selling the shovels? You woke up in San Francisco in 1848 owning nothing, but you were never poor. You simply knew where the future was standing, and you got there first.